Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to go into further details about the Inception model on the two EURUSD short examples that I took today. Well, actually, I took 3 trades. We'll go over them quickly. And a lot of people asking, so is your model basically just overlapping gaps? And of course, there's more to it. You can't just, if it was that simple, everybody would probably be doing it. You have to also understand narrative and understand liquidity and other things that are going on when you anticipate a potential setup based on the model that I teach here on this channel. So anyway, we had a large drop on euro dollar, and I mentioned on the chat that I am still looking for lower prices in general. I want to see this low as a potential target and this low for like longer term objective. And why this low? And specifically because if you really draw a trend line between these 3 candles, I like to basically target the midpoint of it, which is here, roughly speaking. So let's go to the 15-minute chart. I also mentioned when we were around here, I mentioned start looking at euro dollar, see if you can find short opportunities, because I also said that any potential retracement up, I would consider it for shorting opportunities. And when I look at price, my eyes immediately go to things like this high here. This was the last swing high before we created this lowest point here that broke the swing high that broke this low, right? So ideally, how Michael teaches, if you are short, you would like to see price action taking out a short-term high before going lower, and it did that. Even it was a little bit late in the day, but still, this was timing was not ideal, but the entry was, I think it was absolutely great. So let's look into that. So after this rate happened, I shorted based on the Inception model. So again, the idea to go short is, first I was waiting for buy side liquidity being taken out, and then I wanted to go short. If you can see here, we had this imbalance here, and I'm not going to draw a fib, but you can clearly see that this imbalance was in a premium relative to this, from this high to this low, this fractal here, right? And let's remove this. And we had a tiny imbalance also right here. I'm just going to put these lines here so you can see better. Yes, there was also a small imbalance here, but my eye was really on this imbalance because this imbalance was higher than this high. So this is what I was looking at. I was looking for price to take out this high and go inside, this area here, and this was a beautiful look. This weekly trade pretty much was just inside this the upper portion of this imbalance here, and then price started dropping. So once I saw this, I shorted around this candle, on this candle, somewhere around here. I think, yeah, here. So my stop was 5 points. If you try to, in this case, if you try to have a stop just slightly above this imbalance, you're asking for trouble, because this is not even, I know, this is like 2 pip stop loss. You are asking to be stopped out. You have to be reasonable, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it like all these guys on social media saying that only after the fact they show you 20R trades that you can do it every day. You cannot do it every day, and definitely not, you cannot trade with a 2 pip stop loss every single time. You can't. So I have to be reasonable, allowing myself to be, giving myself a little room for error. So my stop was really 5 points. Yeah, I shared this every single on the channel, and I think this was a very good placement, first because again it gives a little bit of breathing room for an error, and it was honestly, I could have made it in like 4 points, but I just 5 pips was good because it was protected by this high and this high. So you had your stop was beyond 2 highs, so this was a very safe area to put your stop loss. Again, very logical area. So this was a trade, and you can see actually it did give like a 2R, a little bit more than 2R below this low here. I took my first partial around here, like it was like pretty much 10 points retraced a little bit. So like it was 9 points. I put my stop at break even, and then the trade took me out. So it was a small win. Again, everything was shared on my Telegram channel, and I shared my bias, and I shared even when we were, I think, somewhere around here. I don't know. I think when we were somewhere around here, I said, you know, start looking if Euro wants to give you short opportunities, and you can see that shortly after there was a setup. So some people might find this setup not as, you know, easy to see, and that's totally fine while you develop. And again, I'm doing this for almost 5 years now, so I trust my model. I would not be sharing it publicly if this was some kind of a, you know, stuff that did not work consistently. It does. So this was my first entry. Let me remove this. You can clearly see it. I'll just keep this high here. So even if this entry was kind of hard to spot for you, the second entry, so this price took me out in at break even. This was a first trade, small win. Again, the idea was I was selling in a premium market above this important high, and of course I had these lows in mind, this low in mind I had when I was shorting. So it did not give me it on the first go. So this, you should immediately you see the YouTube model from what ICT is teaching on his YouTube channel. This was the imbalance in a premium relative from this high to this, in this fractal, from this high to this low. This was your break of structure. You disregard all these imbalances. Let's just draw a fib. Right? So these imbalances you're not interested in below the 50%. Well, this you can kind of start looking, but if you have an imbalance, again, so high, you know, high up in here, you can account for that too, or at least, you know, wait a little bit, wait a few candles to see if it wants to push up high. Nothing wrong was entering anywhere like in this area, maybe, or even maybe on this candle, and then if your stop was, you know, a little bit above this high, you would be perfectly fine. You'll have some drawdown, but eventually you'll go in your favor. But again, price took me out, so I re-entered based on the ICT YouTube model, and this was beautiful. And same thing, I had my stop around here, I don't know, somewhere here. Same thing, I had a 5-point stop, 5 pip stop. I'm so used to trading indices, I call it pips, points. And this is, I had all these lows also marked. I shared this too on the Telegram, and it did hit all of them. So I took partials also at 2R. I think somewhere here, the first partial, and then I took partial also at, I think, 18 pips, something like that. Here, around this area, and then here, and I'm still holding a small position, a tiny position. I want to see if price wants to tank tomorrow and give me my objectives. But I honestly don't care, because I already made several successful trades on this, so I don't care if it goes eventually to my targets or not. I'm a short-term trader, and honestly, holding this into the new session, even small partials, is kind of, you know, it goes really against my nature. I like to be in and out quickly, but we'll see what we get. So again, this was the first entry. All right, based on the Inception model, the idea was selling in a premium above this important high, trusting that we should see lower prices, and we did in fact get this. And again, the idea is that, okay, it did not go immediately to those lows that I showed in the beginning of the video, right? But you don't need that. As long as you see a setup, again, with a 5-point stop, 5 pip stop, you can see that this was plenty of setups to give you 2, 3R, and even more like 4R trades right here. That's how you trade. So this was the Asian entry, Asian session, right here. And this happened just recently. I shorted here. Let's see. So again, my eye was on inside of this imbalance here, and we have an imbalance here. Look at what if you zoom out, you can see immediately what the price did with this run up. Isn't this equal highs? So price took out equal highs from the previous session and we had overlapping imbalances. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm trusting that price already did take out buy side liquidity. So what's it going to do next? It's going to go for sell side, and this was my target for 2-hour trade. Actually, if you look closely, there was an imbalance also. I saw this here, this overlapping area here. So I gave myself room to be wrong. I wasn't sure if it wants to go higher, and it did. So I did have like a few pips in drawdown. So I entered when price came back in this here, in this gap here, so somewhere here. My stop was 4.5 pips. This was my stop. Again, you want to give yourself room. You want to give room for the trade. So on this candle, this was I had a drawdown of what, like 2 pips maybe, yeah, so around that 2 pips ish, and then price started dropping. Also notice how much price action really happens. If I put this back, and essentially you see this overlapping area here. Notice how much price action, how many candles, literally how much price action, rejection. You see that, you know, rejection, rejection, rejection. How much price action happens in here. I think it's beautiful. So my stop was 4.5 pips, and all I did was target these relative equal lows. I mean, this immediately stands out, right? So this was a 2-hour scalp for Asian session. It fit my rules because first this trade happened at 8:20. This was my entry at 8:25. So between the 7 and 9 p.m. window that I mentioned in my previous video, this trade fit all criteria. It took out buy side here, and again, if it takes out buy side, what's it gonna do next? It's gonna go for sell side. So this was my 2-hour trade. I paid myself, I closed the trade. I'm leaving this small. You can see price did go lower, in fact below this low. So if I held, could have got like a 2.5 ish, but I'm sticking to my rules. 2-hour trade. And you can see also here, this is what I don't like about Asia, that actually when price came so close to these lows, it actually consolidated for another like 6-7 minutes before dropping. It was, you know, basically at around like all this time, like around 1.4, 1.5 R. So that's what I don't like. You know, it takes, during Asia, usually it takes some time to drop. But eventually give me my 2R, I'm done. Again, the logic is you don't really even need your targets to be hit, or you don't need to know the daily bias always. You can just simply work with a few hours of data. If you zoom out, I mean, this is enough to work with. Relative equal highs, liquidity, buy side, offset in sell side. That was it. So at this point, I don't care. I have a small partial running again, like I said, which goes completely against my scalper's nature. If it drops later in the day, great. If it doesn't, if it goes up and takes me out, who cares? I paid myself already. I'm left a small portion. If it takes me if it takes me out, I don't care. I paid myself basically having 1, 2, 3 trades. So hopefully this clears some doubts or questions that I receive. I see very, a lot of common questions coming up. So it's not just looking at overlapping gaps. Ideally, all gaps have to be in a premium relative to their fractals, and it has to be some kind of maybe buy side rate. And if you short, again, your eye should go immediately looking for sell side liquidity pools. So that's the idea behind the trade. All right. I hope this is useful. Again, everything was shared on my Telegram, the bias, the trades, so feel free to check it out. Link is always in the description and in my on this channel too, so shouldn't be a problem for you to find it. All right, with that being said, I'll talk to you next time. Be safe.